Yo, 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 yo. It is me, Mike Taylor. I'm here for you. And today we're going to do a little more on massing inside of Revit today instead of inside of SketchUp. I think that, having seen now somebody from the class sent me some of the D&D information, so thank you for that. I didn't have access to it before. I've got some of the reference material here with me, so thank you for sending that over. You know who you are. I won't say any names. Thank you very much. And we've got some AutoCAD files and it looks to be some reference images from a couple different folks. So thank you for sending that over. Maybe I can share those images first just so you guys can see eventually, I think, where you guys want to get to. And it does incorporate more than one tool. So this tutorial, we've only got an hour, so I'm going to try and tie together a couple of things. The first being, I would like everybody to be able to get their CAD massing properly inside of Revit and have their project coordinates correspond to their local location. Those are the two major things. And then we might be able to squeeze in some time getting some of these images more together. I don't really know if an hour is going to be enough time, given that we're trying to do things slowly. But first things first, why don't I share some of those images? If I just jump to the stream here. So this was one of them. So thank you very much for sending this over. I would say this is it's definitely not strictly Revit, right? So I think that's the big trap of some of this imagery here. I want everybody to know that this is not coming straight out of the box of Revit. In my mind anyways, there's definitely with some of the shearing of the text and it's just nice. It's much nicer than I've seen in terms of versus Revit. The base modeling, so some of the base information, things like the massing of the buildings could have come from Revit. You know, some of this stuff for sure comes from Revit, but I would guess, and this is for somebody who sent me this note, I would guess that this comes from Adobe Illustrator. So if you know Adobe, that's great. If you don't, it's its own learning curve. I encourage you to try it out. We'll see how far we get today. I'm probably not going to get all the way to do a crash course in Adobe Illustrator. However, that's just so you guys have some confidence here. Some of these, the line work here, you can see is very particular around this massing. To me, that says this is likely done in Adobe Adobe Illustrator. I think I'm going to say like 90%. But that doesn't mean you can't do it. It just means that I can't do it in the hour we've got here. So second thing, let's see if we've got another image here. I thought this was going to just go. It's not. Next one here. This is looking a little bit more like what you might get out of Revit with some of our, color-coded massings. So some of our color-coded massings here with a view of the kind of city and this kind of thing. Yeah, this is looking more like straight out of Revit or SketchUp, actually. This looks like it might also be out of SketchUp. Just to give you an idea, and then again, this person has used some tools to get Photoshop, or this could also be done in Illustrator, get some of these images into the diagram. Last one here is, I think this is all the same project. Last one here is, again, I would bet this is coming out of the base modeling done in Revit and then some additional kind of extra work done inside of Illustrator. So I would also say this is a very common workflow in an architecture office. So be prepared for, Revit is definitely it's the bread and butter. It's what most of us are going to be great at. But then to bring it to the next level, we're looking at some of these other Adobe suite softwares, things like Photoshop and Illustrator, InDesign, all these other fun ones to get more familiar with how to get a drawing or an image in presentation format. And that's going to be what you may be asked to do is, how do I sell the project? How do I get an idea across? How am I communicating the best possible way to clients or friends or colleagues or other coworkers, right? So how do I quickly convey an idea? And today we'll try to get to the kind of base modeling. So again, 45 minutes or so. It doesn't give us a ton of time, but I do want to get it across how to get some of the information into a model. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. Like I said, we're not in SketchUp today. We are going to be in Revit. So hopefully those Revit tutorials were okay. Hope is not a strategy though. So if there were questions or comments, criticisms, let me know. I've done I've done a couple things in the stream today to get us a little higher resolution. I think there's something wrong with my recording resolution. So let me know in the comments or send me an email, send me a note saying, I want to see more of this. I want to see more of this. I do appreciate anybody who has sent me a message. Thank you for that. And let's just get into it. So first things first, somebody, again, won't say names, sent me the site massing. This is crucial. Thank you for sending me this, because without this, I'm kind of just imagining what your site looks like. So we've got the site massing here. I'm just going to double click it, open it up inside of AutoCAD here. So I think you guys all have access to AutoCAD. You can see here there's like a bunch of garbage all hanging out. And one of the first things we want to do inside of AutoCAD. This is a 3D AutoCAD model. So you can see here we've got your site. So hopefully you guys have actually done some of this stuff, and if you haven't, hopefully I'm here to help a little bit with how we're going to get this AutoCAD model into Revit. I also don't know where your site is. I'm going to take some guesses. So I would think, if I was going to guess, your site is probably where this empty building is, kind of central to the plan. It's quite a few residences over here, residences down here. And then I think this is a kind of more main street with this empty lot over here. I am guessing. I'm going to make some assumptions. If it's false, just, doing my best. So we've got, I'm just going to scroll out here, zoom out a little bit. Again, all this garbage. One really important thing to do is on your keyboard, make sure we kind of zoom extents. So zoom E is going to give us, this is everything. So I'm going to go to top here, just make sure we got everything. Zoom extents. So that's it. Sometimes what will happen is you'll have a little rectangle way over here in the middle of space. It could be tiny, it could be huge, and it will mess up the kind of size of the import. So one strategy to get that kind of organized is, rather than do any of that, fun stuff of trying to find all the garbage in our rendering, in our AutoCAD file, and trying to delete it, piecemeal. What we can do is we can actually use a tool called the Right Block. So Right Block is WRITEBLOCK. So Right Block or W Block. And what that's going to do is it's going to let us just basically copy out the things that we want to keep as part of the CAD file. So for us, I think we want to keep all of this stuff. So I'm just going to go ahead and bottom right to top left, we'll select everything within that crosshair. And now I'm actually going to type W block in my keyboard here. You can see W block. I guess I could have just shown you this rather than spell it out for you. So right block, hit our little enter key here. We selected the objects. I'm going to pick a place to save it. I've already saved one, but save it wherever you need to save it. And let's just do this again. Massing test. Save this, and it's going to say, okay, did you want to pick a base point? It's up to you. You can either choose, the base point is, it's saying, where is the origin for my project? So for us, it's, we can pick a point if we want. We can say, okay, we would like the origin point to be right there at the kind of edge, the edge of our site, which is cool. And the units here, I believe this is in meters. So I believe it's in meters, so don't take my word for it, but make sure we'll double check when we're inside of Revit. But hit OK here, and it's going to do a little export massing test. And we should, when we open up Revit and import this, or link it, I should say, when we link it, we should see that import point, that linked origin point, and we should be good to go. So I've got two files here, so make sure I open up the right one. I think it's going to be this one. And so did the AutoCAD. Cleaning files can take days. It can take hours, or it can take days, or it can take minutes, depending on how clean and how good your file is. What we're going to do now is we're just going to open up a kind of standard template, one of the standard templates here. Let's jump into new, and we'll just do an architectural template and create a new project. So if you guys have already done this in 316, that's cool. I'm going to do it again here just so you can see it and have a recording of it. So right now this is just nothing. There's nothing here. So really simple, really easy. We'll keep things just nice and tight. We're going to jump up here, go to the insert tab on the ribbon, and we're going to link the CAD. So link CAD. So AutoCAD is a CAD software. So computer aided drafting. I'm going to hit link CAD here, and I'm going to look for my site massing here. So I got that site massing. I can see a little, is this correct? In fact, I think I made a new one, right? So where did I put it? Did I put it in our downloads? Where did I put it? This is what I get for testing this out before the tutorial. So super quick here. Let's just do this W block again, and we will W block. I just got to remember where I saved it, guys. Oh, it's on my desktop. Okay, so I don't know why it's not letting me see it. Let's jump back into Revit here. It should be, whoops. It should be in my desktop. Massing test. Okay, sorry. Apologies. Here it is. So positioning, we'll leave it auto origin to origin. You can set it by yourself if you want to. I'm just going to leave it like that for now. Import units. Make sure we set that either to auto detect or meters. We know what's meters, so I'm just going to set it to meters so we don't end up with any hiccups. It's up to you if you want to correct lines that are slightly off axis. I think it's helpful just to keep that on. And we'll hit open. So remember, we're linking the CAD. We're not importing it. Hit open, and now it's going to do a little thinking. And now, if I hit zoom extents, we have the whole model. It's all in here. So how dope is this? You know, when I was doing some of that SketchUp stuff, I thought, oh, they're going to need to, you know, model some of this stuff. It looks like you guys have a pretty cohesive, it's a finished, or mostly finished, massing model that you can use. So I've got, you know, this is all living as a element inside of Revit. If I jump to 3D here, if I jump to my standard default 3D view, I should see a whole city, or whatever, a part of a city. Hold shift and I'll do my little orbit around here. And yeah, so you guys are in pretty good shape. Hopefully you can like get to this as a kind of starting point. One thing that I did have a couple questions about was how to set up the kind of circle for the sun study. So super important. How do we get at that question of the sun study itself? And if you guys haven't done this in class, that's cool. Try and do it quickly here now. The site, I think, is this little parcel of land here. So I'm going to guess that that's where it is. Some first things first, what we need to do is down here in our little, I'm going to say this is the utility bar. I can't remember, there's a name for it. If I click on the sun path little tool here, I'm going to hit sun settings first. And then what we're going to need to do is just, you know, choose some of the settings that we want here. This actually isn't what I want. I'm going to hit cancel here. I want to be able to turn this on, solar steady. Undo that real quick. We need to pick a location essentially first. So in my head, if I just turn this on, it's okay. It's going to ask me for a location. Great. So sun will not display because the relative view is selected in sun settings. So we're going to have to pick a location, much like we did in SketchUp. So we know that this is, I think it's going to be in Toronto, Etobicoke. Why didn't it let me choose? So let's just double check this. Sun settings. Location. So location, London, United Kingdom. So we want to make sure that we set this sun setting to, for me, I'm just going to set it to the default list here. Jump to Toronto. And just for us, roughly how the sun is acting in our vicinity at the 44th parallel here, 43 and 2/3. Hit OK. Hit OK. And now you can see we've started the process of getting our little sun study together. The sun is on, but the shadows aren't on. So let's make sure we turn on our little shadows here. Very odd little symbol here, but if we turn those shadows on, we're going to start to see the shadows emerge, right? So even just the back of our buildings, we can see these little shadow elements started up. And then at the top here, we've got our little sun, and we can actually just drag it along here. It's going to let me select it. So we can choose throughout the year where it's sitting, or we should be able to, oh, I see. We should be able to select some other areas. Where do we want to actually have the study for? So if I jump to, whoops, keep this sun on. If I jump to sun settings here, and maybe what we can do is set it to a still. That looks good, single day. And maybe we just choose this is okay, hit okay. And now I should be able to, aha. Should be able to, why isn't it letting me select? Oh, I see. So, all I want to do is change some of the settings here. So I've literally done something. I just did this, so I'm not sure what's going on here. We should be able to select different times of the day. I guess what it's asking me to do is actually just set it up here, which we can, of course, change the time of day using our little, in our modify panel here, we've got the solar study and changing some of the time of year, and then also the time of day. So we can change any time of day. You can see how the sun is starting to change the time. So usually we would probably like to see the equinox, summer solstice there, set it super quick. The winter solstice, set it super quick, right? Nice and easy for us to see how the shadow lines are going to play out on our plan. If we jump to our site here, where I think our site is, it's probably somewhere around here. We can start to see how those shadows are starting to play with the overall site here. One thing I did have questions about from some of our classmates was, how do I get it? Say, for instance, that my the circle is, you can see how big it is. One thing we can do is if I select the circle itself, I can actually I can actually select, do I want it to be bigger? If I, make it bigger, conversely, I can click on it and set it to 100, make it a little bit smaller. Maybe you don't want to have the entire map of your site plan here. Maybe you just want a smaller zone for the sun study, and I'll show you how to do that in just a second. One thing I do want to do is just, for me, this view is fine, but what I like to do is set it to hidden line, just so that everything is white. And now we can see just a little bit more clarity, the entirety of the site, the entirety of the whole project here. One thing we can do is, I'm going to try this again. I think we should be able just to, I think it's because I hit solar study. Yeah, so you can see here, if I don't hit solar study, I can select our little pieces of the sun, literally the sun, and I can move it along our azimuth here. So if this is your preferred way to set the sun, then you can do it that way. And let's see how we can also set the day. So if I prefer to have it, in August, actually let's do September, September 21st, the fall, the autumnal equinox. If I set that to September, you can see the path of the sun has now changed. It's further up in the sky, and so on. So, we can change this again throughout the day and what have you. If you want it to be earlier in the day or later in the day, it's one thing. And then if I was like, oh man, I'd really prefer just to have a smaller portion of my site here all organized for my little sun study. What we can do is we can actually just go ahead and turn on our section box. So make sure you can turn on your section box inside of our view. Just jump over here, section box. And if I click on our section box, I'm just going to shrink down, give us a little bit less area to less area to consider as part of our plan here. But you know what? Before I do that, I'm realizing that maybe it makes sense that I also want to see which way is north. Making sure that we orient our site. If this is our site, which way is north? And in order to do that, we need to be in a plan view. So make sure we've got level 0 opened up. And so I'm just going to go ahead and do that. Open up level 0. And what I'm going to do before I do any of that fun other stuff is organize our north arrow, our project north, to be straight up, down. So let's make sure we do that in, I think it's manage. Yes, so manage inside of our rotate project north. So rotate project north, and we're gonna have to pick a line. If this is hopefully our site, I'm gonna hit this align selected plane. And now we've got, I'm gonna hit OK. And now we've got a plan that is a little bit more up, down. It just helps people read your plans and understand exactly how the building is gonna be located on the site in a kind of up, down location. So project north versus site north. We've got jump back to 3D. Doesn't really affect anything here. I was thinking it was going to, but that's okay. So what we will do is, let's just trim this down. You know what? Actually, let's do this first. Section box. And zoom extents. Okay. And now I'm just going to come back in here, trim down. You can see we've got just our little site hanging out, or what I believe is our site hanging out. Whoops. Grab our little pulls here. Now, if I know that this little zone in here is going to be our site proper, we can start to get this little piece closer. And you might be thinking, well, I want to shrink this. And if you come up here and you hit this 50%, to shrink it even more, Revit's going to tell you that it needs to be between 100 and 500. It doesn't really help us. We want to make it smaller, and it is smaller. So what I found this morning was what you do is you're just actually going to turn the sun path off, and then you're going to turn it on again, and it should make it a little bit smaller. It's not perfect, but it's going to be a little bit more organized. Right. One thing that, if you didn't set it up this way, one thing that I noticed from one of you was, the circle was actually located way over in space away from our kind of center point. And the way that this works is that Revit is really looking at, your project and saying, okay, what is the project origin? And that's how it's locating this the sun path. So what we would want to do is make sure we find our project origin and either relocate it, or when we do the linking of the AutoCAD, making sure that the project origin is somewhere that makes sense for us in terms of the massing. So I would argue that the workflow for a project like this should be make a new template, clean up your AutoCAD, import the AutoCAD, find your site, get the project north going, and then start modeling and make sure that all your project coordinates are appropriately set. So you might be wondering, okay, but where are my project coordinates? Where are my coordinates for the kind of the origin of the project? And they're actually hidden. So if you are curious, if I hit this little reveal hidden elements, it should be, okay, so it's over here, but this is our kind of project origin. And chances are, if you've got a project origin that's way over in space, it's going to mess a little bit with how Revit is seeing your sun path. So we're not going to touch that right now. Should have something like this. We're in pretty good shape already. And you shouldn't be able to modify anything inside of this kind of import. But for us, what we might want to do is, maybe we want to model a little piece of building. For me, I'm just going to turn off our sun path for right now. And then what I'd like to do is, maybe I'll turn off the shadow so I don't break my computer. What I'd like to do is just model a little something. I don't know what the requirements are for you guys, but just so if we've forgotten how to mask things, which, does happen, let's jump over to the massing and site, and let's just do an in-place mass. And you're going to get a little note that says, Revit has enabled the show mass. So a newly created mask will be visible. Hit close. That's cool. So cool building. And now what we'll do is we'll jump in here and let's just mask something up real quick. You know, I've got my create form. Remember, we've got, sure, that's fine. What I'll do is I'll just keep a 3D snap here. You can see this is, whoops. This is, I find it pretty clunky compared to our friend SketchUp here. It does have some, you know, nice things. This gumball, you know, if you're like, you want to push and pull some of these things, you can certainly do that. If you want to move some of the lines around, some fun things, whatever you like. You know, I know we have the angular plane setback, right? So I'm thinking we're going to layer cake this thing. So I'm just going to keep on layering our building back. Create form, solid form, something like this, you know. Remember, if we just select a face, actually we can select a line and we can set a piece of this. So I set this to 12 meters, for instance. It will adjust the height of the line. But if I set the other side, it will become parallel. And now we have a little layer cake. If we want to select a face, we can tab and pull this down. Let's call this 9 meters instead, 3 meters of floor, something like this. Now we have a, little massing. So whatever you like, something super simple. Hit that little check mark tool. And one thing I noticed just for you guys is I did notice that inside of Revit that it likes to keep things, whenever you're massing something up, it likes to keep them transparent, and this is to do with a kind of built-in default setting from Revit, which is in the object style. So we just got to remember, if you're like, man, why is it showing up transparent? I really want this just to be a solid piece of geometry. I'm going to jump over here to my Manage tab and jump into Object Styles, come down here to Massing. And what we're going to do is we're just going to select this little ellipsis here for the material. And we're going to say, okay, what would you like to do? We'll set it to 100% for the transparency and the shading. Hit OK again. And, oh, whoops, did I set it the wrong way? I must have set it the wrong way. So let's do that real quick. Again, Object Styles. You guys, it's so nice you get to see it twice. This actually should be 0% transparent. Apologies. 0% transparent rather than 100%. And now we've got a solid piece of building. You know, of course, because we've done this massing as 3 separate components, we can push and pull these things, mess around with them as we see fit. Anything that's parametric, right? So we've got these little pieces. I don't know what the setback is for your respective buildings, but we can certainly mess around with this. And to go even further, we could also do a little solar study, right? Let's turn on the shadows and we can start to see, okay, cool, like how is the sun going to be affecting the building, and then how is it subsequently going to be affecting, people's backyards and this type of thing. So back to, if I zoom all the way out, we can see that my sun study is off. So let's see if we've got, the sun path is off, excuse me. So shadows are on, sun path is off. Some people like to do it this way. So now we've got just the shadows on. You don't have to see all the kind of other bits of our sun path here. So if I turn the sun path back on, we'll see, where is that sun coming from? I can click on this and I can move it right throughout the year. So I can see June, August, you can see it's kind of changing. I can come all the way down to December down here, right? So if I just, hover here and, we can see the impact throughout the year, what that sun is doing. Conversely, we can also, change the time. If I want to make it high noon, 12 p.m. We can see a little bit of sun happening there in October. And conversely, we can just change this September 21st, let's call it September 21st. And now, we've got a little a little autumn equinox, what's happening here. We can see in real time, what are the impacts of the shadows on the overall site. Cool, right? So that's the building. So building and site. What we can do as well is, back to the idea of, back to our examples, I've got these couple pieces here. Do we want to see the long shot, right? Do we want to see the long shot? And I can see somebody here has actually programmed some of these separate masses, and you can certainly do that inside of Revit. But further than that, we can also look at things like, cutaway sections and this type of thing. How do we get at some of these kind of bigger ideas about what the massing looks like and how it all shakes out? So this is one project, but when we're looking at, strictly speaking, at the sun studies, which is what you guys asked for, we've got some of this stuff hanging out. Whoops, this is the wrong file. I've got my nice little massing here. Back to our, imports and exports. If we really want to start looking at how would we start the process of generating some of these sun study geometries out of Revit, one thing you can start with is just really exporting what I would say is the baseline stuff. So, do we want to come all the way out? Maybe we do. Maybe we want to see more of the site, right? So remember, I've just got my little scope box here. I'm just going to mess around, see if we got a view that makes sense for us that we want to see. I might, for now, as part of, when I export this, it's not really super clean if I export this. And one thing we usually do inside of, presentation documents and so on is we do a little post-processing, do a little bit of work after the fact, and using a workflow that works for you. If I'm going to export this to a PDF and then start manipulating some of the graphics inside of AutoCAD, inside of Illustrator, that's something that, does take place. The world is your oyster. If you'd rather use Photoshop, that's cool too. The big difference between those two softwares, one is a raster software, so rasterizing images, and the other is a vector-based software, which means, vectors means your lines are going to be crisper and all that fun stuff. So one thing that I was experimenting with earlier is exports to vector with shadows on. I would advise that you don't do that. The shadows should always be exported as raster images. It just seems to really, really slow down the computers. So it might work for you. Got a pretty beefy computer here, and it's still struggling. It's a lot of extra effort to rasterize what would be a large image using some of these shadows. That all being said, let's just get to it. So we're going to export this image. And I'll show you the kind of raster version first so you can see what I'm talking about. So for us, it's up to you if you want to put it on a sheet. For me, I'm just going to export as a PDF. And I'm going to, over here in our create output using, for now, I'm just going to show you how to do this, is I'm going to raster process it. I'm going to throw it onto an ArchD or a 24 by 36. Make sure we hide scope boxes, hide the crop boundaries. That's cool. I'm going to hit export here. TikTok. And now we're just waiting. Pretty quick, right? So not so bad. Pretty quick. New Windows makes me crazy. Yeah, why would I not want to refresh? Goofs. Okay, so where did I... Oh, it's because it's a PDF. What did I save it as? Is it this one? No. Guys. What did I export this as? Project 1 inside of documents. Okay, cool. So I'm just going to jump to documents and project 1. I'm just going to open this up and you'll see it's not the best, right? So pretty fuzzy, not really what we want. But just so you guys can see our wonderful little, pancake or layer cake tower here, hanging out with that. Started, but one thing that can be really successful when you're doing some of this post-processing stuff is keeping the information in layered separate documents. So what I mean by that is you might have a base file. So the base file is just your massing of the existing site with nothing else, no annotation, even no shadows. And I'll show you how to do that. And then the second thing we would do is export the shadows with this raster image. We can keep that, but keep the sun study off for now. And then a different layer might be just the sun study. So, just the sun study, and then we can start to manipulate that sun study information separately from the underlayment. So, and what I mean by that is just cleaning up the way that our sun looks. And, I hate this text. It's so ugly, but you might not. You might love it. If you love it, that's cool. But you want to keep things simple, you can do it that way. But let's do that. So what I'll do is I'm going to do an export just of the buildings. So we're going to go ahead and do that right now, and jump back into this one. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to turn off our sun study just for now. So I'm going to turn this off. I'm also going to turn off the shadows for right now. And I'll just show you the big difference here is when we do this export, we should see export PDF. What we'll see is vector. Let's just do a vector one. Fit to page, that's cool for now. And I hit export. It's going to take a lot longer. So it's got to think about the math that we need. Well, a lot longer being that fast. It's got to think about the math that's required for a vector-based drawing instead of a raster-based drawing. If I double-click this image here now, it's a little bit cleaner. Should be a lot cleaner. So I'm going to go back and just double-check this, that I did actually set it to vector. I have a feeling I just hit the same thing. So let's make sure we do that correctly. Export PDF. I didn't even change it. So let's make sure we set that to vector. And what we'll do is we'll grab our little documents. That's cool. And project one, vector. And now we've got vector processing. You can change. Oh, this doesn't matter here. Export. Let's try this again. No. Yes. I would like to create a new one. Again, super quick. Let's jump here. Vector-based image. Way cleaner, right? So look at these lines. Look at these lines, right? So if I jump back to project one here, right? Vector, raster. Vector, raster. Camera A, camera B, right? So what do you like better? Obviously, I would think that we really like to see the vector-based imagery here. So a couple other things I can kind of see as I'm doing this exercise. I'm also noticing that we've got some additional CAD things in here for the property lines. It's up to you if you want to leave this stuff in here. I can see this kind of thick line in here. There may be a way inside of Revit to modify some of this, but let's stay on target and we'll do a couple more exports of different material, and I'll show you how to kind of put it all together. So let's keep those two. That's cool. I am going to try, and let's turn our shadows back on. And I'm going to try to give us a little, I should not be messing with the zoom here, but that's okay. File, export, and PDF. And let's try raster quality, presentation, so super high quality. And we're going to switch this back to raster processing just real quick here. Try and keep the shadows, whoops, shadows, oh, come on, shadows on. Hit export again. No. And so step one, export the kind of base geometry. Step two, export some of this, shadow geometry. And then step three, we're going to export only the sun study, just as an example of something that I might do in the office and give you guys an idea of what makes this a kind of compelling drawing, for instance, of the overall site. So that was the shadows. And now I'm going to turn off the shadows, and I'm going to turn on the sun path. And turn on the sun path, and now I'm actually going to turn off the geometry of the rest of the project, and I'm just going to export this kind of visual sun study piece. So I'm actually going to turn off our imported categories, and I think the only thing that's modeled currently are the levels, right, and our massing. So let's turn off that massing as well. Massing is off. Is this gonna work? Nope. how are you on if... Interesting. Masking must be temporarily on. Okay, that's okay, whatever. So I'm just gonna temporarily hide this. Normally I wouldn't say to do this, but it's fine for our purposes right now. Zoom extents, and same thing, I'm gonna export just this little piece of geometry for a little annotation here, just so you can see where the sun path is. And I'm going to, I think we can probably do this as a vector. Let's do that, and we'll say project 1, sun study path. No. So now we should have 3. Man, Windows is terrible. Documents, and let's head over here. So we got sun study path. Blast this off. So now you can see we've got 1, shadows. 2, just the shadows, right? 2, a little bit cleaner, not perfect. Okay, we already opened that one. And then vector, nice and super clean, right? So because I've exported these all as 24 by 36s, they are all the same size, or they should all be the same size. So they should actually layer in pretty well inside of Photoshop. I'm going to do Photoshop first, just so you guys can see the kind of quick and dirty way to do it. And then I'll show you kind of more advanced strategy inside of Illustrator. So one thing you might notice as well is we've got those 3 files, the shadows, sun study path, and vector here. Vector drawings are much smaller than rasterized images. So look how small these are, 85, 119, and then almost 2.5 megs. So I realize this doesn't mean a lot right now in the world of, we're talking terabytes, exabytes, petabytes worth of data, but this stuff does add up inside of softwares, inside of anything. It's better to keep smaller files hanging out than these bigger and bigger file structures. So just to be mindful of that, if you've got 1,000 raster images, it's going to be a lot bigger than 1,000 vector images. The other thing about vector images is that they are infinitely scalable. So think about things like dots per inch when we're printing things. Vector images, it doesn't matter for a vector image if you print it at 1 inch by 1 inch or 25 feet by 25 feet, the fidelity of that graphic will remain the same. A raster image will not. A raster image will, degrade into nonsense as it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. It's why when you print something from a raster image, you want to kind of keep it as a minimum, like 150 DPI, 150 dots per inch. 300 is better, 600 is great, 1200 is insane. But this type of thing where like the dots per inch matters for raster, you won't have that option for vector images. So that's cool. Let's jump to, I've just got a Photoshop file open. This is what I do. I would hang out here. I'm going to open up a new Photoshop file. I know that my drawing is 24 by 36 inches. So I'm going to go ahead and just make it 36 by 24. And you can see here pixels per centimeter. Man, 300. Sure. Sorry, I've never seen this pixels per centimeter. So that's cool. We're going to hit create here. And now I should be able just to drag and drop my stuff in here. So right now I've got just the background as the layer. So I'm going to jump into my documents here. Where's my background? My background is just my kind of base file here. It's going to try and import this as a smart object. So I'm just going to make sure that I've got this. I think media box is probably going to do us. Doesn't really matter. It's more, I'm just trying to make sure that when we do overlay things, that it all becomes the same in terms of size. So I'm going to hit OK here. I think that's okay. So that worked. That's good. I'm going to hit enter, and it should just give me a little, I'm going to zoom in here. Whoops. Zoom in here. You can see, so unfortunately, Photoshop is a raster-based editing software. So love it or hate it, we've got a raster-based editing software. Right now, this is a linked graphic. So essentially, if I this is why this workflow is important. So if I went to re-export that base file, I can keep all of my kind of work done and just relink in this backdrop. So that's piece one here. So that's, we can move this if we want. I would suggest you kind of leave it. Oops. You leave it where it is. Why can't I move it in actual fact? I see. Oh, I see. Because I had it selected. You can move it around if you want. I would suggest for us, for right now, we are going to just keep it in the center here. And nice. And this nice little image. And let's get the shadows in there. So let's do the second thing here. We'll get the shadows. Where are my shadows at? Again, I'm going to click, drag, drop. I don't want the bounding box. I probably want the media box here. So it doesn't matter. It's exported a white background. I'm going to hit OK. Tick tock. And now we can see here, same thing. It's we've got this imported, this imported image of our shadows. And right now, in terms of, if you guys have not used Photoshop before, I should probably take this nice and slow. But if you have, good for you. And one thing that I just want to show super quick is right now, if I zoom in, oh my God. If I zoom in, the image looks okay, right? So, it's up to you. A little bit cleaner, I would say, barely noticeable, but it's up to you if you want to use this or not. In Illustrator, it'll be a lot more noticeable. So, which one? Alt. Step 2. So I've got the vector image, I've got the raster image in here, just so you guys can see what's going on. And you want to turn those off or on. We can do that real quick. I can see the differences in my shadows on or off, right? Another thing we might want to do is grab our last piece here from our documents and throw in our sun study path. So if I do same thing, just drag and drop, you can see here in the preview, the reason I'm swapping this is because now I've got the right scale and size for the image. This isn't perfect. I don't know what happened in the translation here, but it doesn't really matter for us. What we can do is we're just going to adjust the size of this. So I'm just going to make this a little bit bigger and give us some more room. Let's just make this a little bigger. If you were having some challenges with the way that this looked as you were working with Revit here, if you're like, man, I really wish the circle was bigger or smaller, this is a kind of workaround for that. I've got my sun study path here. Using the arrow keys, I can move things around. This is a pretty big image, right? And turn this off or on. It's just keeping the geometry from that image there. But if we do want to make sure that everything is showing through properly, we can hit this little multiply in our blending categories. And now we have the start of a nice little sun study diagram. So you need to do the same thing for every version of, what time of day. This is October at, I guess this is going to be October at 12 p.m., right? October 12 p.m. Say you wanted to get a nice little sun in here. Maybe I want to create a new layer, and I can literally just, so maybe you guys have seen this. The AI tools inside of Adobe Photoshop are phenomenal. So I'm going to hit generative fill, sun. Let's call this sun sphere. Let's try this. Let's see what happens. Let's see what we get. So sun sphere, hit generate. It's going to think for a little bit. And let's see if we get a massive ball of fire or or nothing helpful. That is funny. Let's see what else we got. Do we have a black hole? Perfect. Or a sphere? Not quite what we're going for, but really, really funny. Let's just try sun. Let's see what we get. That was perfect. So I'm happy that I did that because it can work really well, or it can not work so well. So what do we got now? We got a sunflower. We have another black hole. So I would I would argue usually this is pretty good. These are hilariously bad. That's okay. So delete layer for now. A simpler version. Sorry guys, it's really funny. A simpler version is, why don't we just go ahead and we'll make this a really big whoops, too big. Make this a really big dot, and we'll, it doesn't need to be so hard, nice and fuzzy. We'll make it a nice warm yellow sun, and make nice and orange here. Why is it so muddy? Why is it so muddy, guys? There we go. Maybe we can get more yellow, less green. More yellow, more orange. Where are my vibrant colors? Why is this so brutal? Sure, whatever. That's fine. And we'll just grab a little, sun, for instance, right? So we've got the sun here. And, we've also got up, if we wanted to kind of trace a path for the sun to make it a little bit more evident what we're trying to get at here, we've got the pen tool here, or the shape tool. And we could actually, let's do a shape instead. No. Line tool. I guess we could do this. Gotta remember where it is. It's fine. Let's just do it this way. Try and zoom in a little bit here rather than before I get too carried away. And all I'm doing now is if you hold spacebar while you've got it selected, you can start to just draw a little pathway here for our sun. And if you kind of click once, and then you can drag to mess around with the arc of that line. It's a lot simpler inside of, well, I think it's a lot simpler inside of Illustrator to do something like this, but it's just got to be rough anyways. It's doing a rough job here. And now I should be able to shape. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted to do. This is much easier to do in Illustrator, but that's okay. So, no. So I want a shape, but I don't want a shape this way. I want it to be No, it's not gonna work. Okay, guys, I'm sorry. I don't remember how to do this off the top of my head. So what we're gonna do now, anyways, is at least we've got our little sun set up here. Why is this not working? This should be super straightforward. We've got okay. I'm gonna undo all that. Should be a straightforward way to do this. Instead, why don't I do it slightly differently? Let's grab a line is what I would imagine it as, but do I draw it as a path? This is the same thing. Shape. One line, completely useless. So, where is my shape tool? No, I don't want to do that. Okay, I have to come back to that because I don't remember how to do that inside of Photoshop. My mistake. So anyhow, so for now, we've got at least some semblance of what a shadow study might start to look like. We've got our little building in here. What I wanted to do anyways is get out of Photoshop and into Illustrator. I think that for you guys, Photoshop as a starting point is totally fine. But I do actually think that in terms of a professional looking document, by the end of the semester, if you were to try and get to something like this, you're likely going to be using you're going to start inside of Revit, but you're likely going to end up inside of Illustrator. So super quick, why don't we just fire that up? This will be the last thing that I do. And do I have it open? I do. So very similarly, we're going to do a new file here. And I'm going to grab a inches and feet, and let's do width 36 by 24-ish. I'm going to do something very similar. It operates very similar to our Photoshop file. In terms of, you know, how things are going to be layered and how we're going to get at that question of what the overall image looks like. However, we're going to have a lot more flexibility with things like shapes and lines and this type of thing. So let's just go ahead and do that. So jump into documents here. I've got my base file. Where are my layers before I do this? Those are swatches. Okay, so my layers, you know, you can see up here, my layers are very similar to Photoshop here. Some things that some people like to do is just rename them before we start. So we're just going to say base, and we'll call this shadows, and we'll call this sun study. So base, let's just jump in here and grab our vector base. And you can see here we've got a wonderful, it should be able to snap to our piece here. Very similar to Photoshop, snap, and you can lock things. So if you'd like to lock them. But the big difference here is, if I turn off this lock for 1 second, there's kind of two selection tools. This is kind of the big takeaway inside of Illustrator. There's two selection tools. One is the kind of overall select, so the entire object. And if I do that, the entire object, it lets me select the whole thing. However, if I want to select just a piece, I can actually use this direct selection, or in my head it's like an object select. Whoops. But for us, in fact, it is currently we've only got the object itself, so we would actually need to trace things before we get this done. So why don't we go ahead and we'll get the shadows in here. So let's jump over here, grab the shadows, and I'm going to make sure I've got the shadow selected, shadow layer selected, and then I'm going to jump over here and grab our shadows. It's thinking. It's got to rasterize this file, and very similar to Photoshop, but I will say that Illustrator will struggle with some of these larger rasterized files. In fact, I may have crashed my computer just as we're speaking here. So let's see what happens. We're going to do our best to make this work, but tick-tock, right? So as again, the idea here is with our little vector files, you saw how quick and nimble they are, but as soon as I start importing shadows and this type of thing into Illustrator, you may have some challenges with computational power. Wow. Cool. Thank you, Revit and Illustrator. Not to mention I've got like 18 different things open, so we'll give the computer a break. There we go. It's like, it won't let me move it. There we go. So I'm going to zoom in here again, and let's just give ourselves a little bit of, you know, you can see here, definitely slowing down a little bit in terms of computational speed. So if we lock that, we can see if I'm just going to turn off my shadow layer here. Turn off my shadow layer here. Feel like I'm running, oh, there we go. Okay, sorry, I literally just didn't click it. So it could be a little slow, but that's okay. So we've got, you know, just in terms of the rendering itself, I'm gonna zoom in here a little bit. It's actually looking pretty good. Back to our, you know, turn off the shadows, turn them on. You can see here how it's very close to the overlay of what's happening in behind here. So, and then the sun study. So let's just do this last, and I'm just going to zoom out here, grab the sun study, And let's throw this in here, sun steady path. Again, this is another vector file, so it should be pretty reasonable. Just zoom out a little bit. And I'm going to go ahead and our object select. I'm going to make this a little bigger. Make sure you hold shift to scale things appropriately. Hold shift again, and it will scale uniformly rather than non-uniformly, which of course we don't want. I'm going to move things where we want them. Bring this down a little bit. I'm going to lock this. And now, I'm just going to zoom in. And now we can start to see we've got a semblance of some sort of, diagram. Starting out here, the ellipse tool here, we can grab, if you can't draw anything, you're likely in a locked layer. Let's draw the sun. And I'm going to draw a little ellipse here. The way that line work is set up inside of Illustrator is a little bit different than Photoshop. So you've got a fill and you've got a stroke. And the stroke is on the outside of the object and the fill is on the inside. So for me, I'm drawing this, this little sun here, right? And this may or may not be what you want to do. And then the second piece here is much like I was trying to do inside of Photoshop, but failed to do today, is we can do this two ways. There should be a little, line segment tool, but there's really this pen tool here. And this is probably the most common way to do this is I'm actually going to make this nothing. And then I'm going to I'm going to draw the same thing I was trying to do in Photoshop, but it just was not cooperating, which is on me. I'm just going to go ahead and keep drawing my little sun path here and keep drawing it. And now I'm actually going to go over here, some more advanced functions here. I'm going to change what's called the stroke. And now we can kind of see our sun path starting to emerge. Maybe I want to change the dashes here so I can make this a 10 and 10 dash. Whoops. It should, I see. 10 and 10, so we got a little dash going on here, right? One thing we might want to do is, change some of the font here if we really want to get particular about what that font looks like, and so on and so forth. So there's definitely some things we can start to imagine changing as part of this. Okay, it's freaking out a little bit, but that's okay. And okay, stop. So the problem with giant files like this, for instance, is I may, in fact, just for right now, if I turn off the shadows file, it's going to be a lot more nimble for doing things that I want to do. So just remember, you don't need to have those files on all the time, and it's going to do the same thing that I was just doing, was that, just working around inside of Illustrator. With that shadow file on, anything that's rasterized hanging out inside of the Adobe Illustrator space is going to cause a big slowdown because it wants to work with vector-based files. So the last thing here is why don't I just do a quick little, pen jam here. So we've got, what was our example? Something like a, say this one down here. We've got just that nice little black highlight here. So you can either trace everything out or you can pre-model some of this stuff inside of Revit. So for me, I'm just going to trace out our kind of object in real time. So let's jump over to, where'd my Illustrator go? There it is. It's going to call this, building outline. And so that's cool. And I will probably make this black. Yep. And do I want to fill? Why don't we just start with just the outline for now? So very commonly what will happen is you're just like, I'd really prefer that this was outlined. I realize this seems tedious. There are different softwares to do this faster, as in not Illustrator, but Illustrator is pretty good at this in general. Let's just fake this for now. And what I'm trying to do is draw a just the outline of the building. You can see here that my stroke is from my previous selection. So make sure you come back here and you can change the stroke to, let's call it 3. And, now I've got this little massing. Immediately your eye goes, oh, cool, there's this little massing over here. Right. I could, of course, because I've done things in layers, I can now go in and turn off the sun and the sun study. And you can start to imagine now, if I wanted to turn on the shadows, excuse me. Now I've got my drawing back, right? So could be fun, could be interesting for us as we're kind of drawing up our little masses here. So again, I can double click here and I can change this to a little, oops, didn't want to do what I wanted it to do. Let's change this to a teal, right? So, you got nice little colors going on here. What we can do is we can actually change the opacity of just this little fill path here to make this 50%, if we wanted to do something like this. Oh, I was trying to keep the stroke the same. Okay, forget that for now. That's not going to let me do that. Can I do an FX? I can. Why don't I do a little... Why don't I do a little... All I want to do is a little multiply. Where is my multiply? Okay. Anyways, for now, let's just keep it like this. Keep it simple. There's other ways to do that where I could just simply have, there's got to be a way to do multiply. I just don't know what it is off the top of my head. So let's just double check here. Did we do links or did we have a full document in here? So back to our shadows here. I'm going to turn off the shadows. The base file, is that base file a linked file or is it a, I don't know if it's smart or not. Let's just double check that. View, let's go to Windows, links. So I did. So it's linked in. So let's say you're doing this and you get all your stuff set up and you're like, man, why didn't I turn off all of these little, property lines here, right? And you've done all this work and you're like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I did that. In a different life, you just start from scratch, right? But because you guys are, experts now, what we can do is we can actually jump back into either AutoCAD or Revit. And I'm going to check Revit first to see if we've got a layer for our little property lines. But then what we're going to do is rather than having to re-import, replace all this stuff, the workflow is such that we'll just update the link and make sure that you don't change the location of how anything is being linked. And make sure you don't change the kind of overall size of the print. For instance, we got to remember that how big that 24 by 36 becomes important. You can do whatever size you want, 11 by 17 and so on. But let's just go ahead and do that. So I'm going to jump back into Revit here real quick and see if we can turn off these little parcel property lines. Right. Got all this fun stuff turned off. Let's turn it back on. Whoops, there it is. Cancel. Let's see, parcels. So perfect. So rather than have to go all the way back to AutoCAD, we can just hang out inside of Revit. And all I want to do is re-export that kind of base file. So first things first, I'll just turn off the sun study. I don't really need that right now. I'm going to turn this off. And now I'm actually going to jump in here and let's just turn off our, where was it? Here. So parcels. So a little checkbox next to parcels, hit OK. Ta-da, done. So what we can do is rather than delete anything from our other options there, I will just export this again and keep the information inside of Illustrator. So what we'll do is File, Export, PDF, and I'm actually going to do this a different way. So I'm going to make sure that we duplicate this the base file here. I'm just going to call this the original. There's one thing I want to do. Original, and then remember what I'm trying to do here is I'm actually going to replace the documents here. Documents. So why are you doing this to me? Oh, right. Okay, so that's cool. And then I got to make sure I name it correctly. So I think project one, but what is it actually called? We're going to save over this file. So project one dash vector, control C, control V. We'll do that. And then I'm going to export this, and following files already exist. Yes. So let's replace this. Can't create because it's open. So where do I have this open? I have it open here. Let's go close this one. That's cool. And have it open. Whoops. Have it open. I'm going to hit OK. And now, did that work? Did that work, guys? Let's see what we got. Let's jump to the documents and vector. Yes. So that works. So wonderful, right? So we've got all of our kind of, other parcels have been turned off. So let's jump back into Illustrator here. And it's going to give me an update. Hey, did you update the links? I did. I updated the links. So let's do this. I'm going to hit yes. And what we'll see is it should update everything automatically. Ta-da! But now we're missing our building because I forgot to keep the building or turn the building back on. So jump back into Revit. This is, I guarantee you that this will happen. And I'm just going to jump back in here and make sure we've got our building massing turned on. And we'll do the same export again. Let's just jump in a PDF here. Export. Dash vector, browse, documents, that's cool, open. Oh my goodness, documents, open, export, yes. Why is this like this? Hit OK, oh my God, yes you can, I promise that you can. Okay. Okay, same thing, we're gonna just update the Illustrator file here by reloading. So yes, ta-da. So cool, right? So that's all there now. We've got our cute little building in the expanse of all these massings. Again, this is a way to just do multiple different diagrams that are all showing similar things, right? So this one, in this case, we've got a file with the property lines for the parcels of land that are all still on, but you can keep everything in the same locale, right? So this can be really helpful for any of us who are like, we'd like to get more information out of one piece of material. Turn the sun study back on. Turn our sun back on. Look at our wonderful sun path hanging out, right? So where did it go? Turn the sun back on, right? But yeah. So that's super briefly, I know I probably went way over time, but super briefly how I would start the process of getting some of these diagrams together. I realize that's not everything that you guys need to do, but hopefully gives you some ideas for how we're eventually going to get to something like this. Certainly you can just trace things inside of Illustrator. You're going to get to some level of, massing when it comes to actually massing up our building, but eventually you're likely going to take something like our little, let's just do this one last thing, something like our little, oops, wrong drawing, something like a little massing, and you're going to create some units, right? So you guys are doing this as part of D&D here, and I'm just going to duplicate this view real quick, and I'll do one last kind of iteration here just so you can see what's going on. So duplicate, and I'm going to get nice and close, nice and cozy. In this instance, maybe I don't care as much about the sun path. I just want to get to the massing of the building and maybe the direct adjacencies of this. I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to turn the parcels back on for us just so we have a little bit more information. Right, keep my view set up, something like this. If I jump to my elevations, So my east elevation here, where the heck is my levels, right? So this could be a little challenging. So I do find it inside of, once you've got your import all set up, it can be a little challenging to kind of figure out, where are my levels? Where do they live? And for instance, if I just click this, I'm just going to go ahead and hit propagate extents. So propagate. No, it's not going to do anything. Right. So usually what I would do is just try and drag it across. Whoops. Try and drag it across the whole site or what have you to try and get us as much of this site as possible. But rather than do it that way, let's just see if we can jump to 3D here and see where are my levels and see if we can get them closer to our little modeled site here. So where are my levels hanging out? And oh, that's positive. So it's actually across the whole site. So that's okay. Okay, so that's okay. No problem. I was worried it wasn't like that. Then why is it like this and this? Something is happening. So whatever, I'm going to come in here. What I'd like to do, first thing I want to do is set up some of our levels so that I can mass up some of our floors. That's really where I wanted to get to. So I'm just going to draw up a quick little section through here and go to my view. Where are my levels? Where are my levels? Are they off for some reason? They are not. Interesting. Okay, hold on. Let's see what we got here. So if I turn off this, let's just do it this way. Annotations, turn you off. Let's see, where do our... Aha. So something I didn't foresee here is that potentially the way that I just masked that up super quick and super fun, maybe it's not oriented exactly perpendicularly to my levels. So let's just go ahead and we're going to check this real quick because I don't see our levels, but I don't see our levels in this view either. Aha, I'm so silly. Maybe I'm not so silly. Where are my levels living? Annotations. Should be easy to find, guys. So I don't know where my levels have disappeared to, but sometimes that does happen for whatever reason. And I'm going to go ahead and try. I'm going to delete all these. Let's do this a different way. But I should see the levels in here. Why don't I see the levels? Go ahead and annotate here. I just want excuse me, view. I want to see a couple of our elevation tags here. So let's see what we've got. It's not letting me. Go to my view now. You know what? It doesn't matter. I'm just going to go back to the 3D view here that I have here. I've got these levels all set up already. I'm not sure why they're not showing up. I'll have to double check that. One thing I just wanted to super quickly do is if I wanted to create some new layers, what do I want to do? I want to get to a way of us copying these layers up. So I'm going to copy a couple of these layers. Oh, I can't copy in 3D. Of course I can't. Where are you, levels? Where are you? So this is good for everybody to see anyways, is that if something is off axis, you're not going to be able to see those levels. So for whatever reason, I don't know, when I went to create our project north, something has messed up. I'm not entirely sure what's going on here. So let's try this again a different way. I will. This isn't going to work either. Okay, let's do view and elevations. Let's see if we can just craft a little elevation over here and go to my elevation view. I still don't see my levels. So really interesting. I'm going to have to do some research here why that's happening that way, because I know that quite simply what I would do in a different situation is just find those levels and figure out where they lived, which I can see them in 3D, but I cannot see them anywhere else. And I can't do anything to these. Are they pinned? No, they're not pinned. Okay, so for whatever reason, I don't know, my levels aren't showing up properly. They should show up. I'm gonna have to figure that out. Let's just do this real quick. So the last thing I wanted to do is just to mask some floors for us. So if I just do another 4,000, actually let's do 3,000, and then we'll do another 3,000, and so on and so on. Let's just keep going here. This can be a really effective way to get at the massing of our building. All right, so I've got those 7 or so floors, and now what I can actually do is just mass all those floors at the same time. I'm gonna hit mass floors, mass them all, select all of these, check once, hit OK. And now look at this, I've got all my floors masked up properly, right? So I have some inclination of how high I wanna be for each of these floors. So I did notice that right now, maybe instead of this, I do want to, I guess I've got 8,000, and for this one, I've got 8,025. So what I'm going to do is just swap my floors. Instead of those first two, I believe are, let's try this again. Those first two are 10, so let's do 5 and 5, and then 4 and 4, and 4 and 4. So 5, 5, 4, 4, 4. So back to our levels here. Level 1, let's make 5,000, 10,000, 14,000, 18,000. Delete 7. 22,000. Okay, let's try this again. So I'm just going to go ahead and hit mass floors here, and 1 through 6, checkbox, hit OK, and we should see, a nice little image here of our floors. So that's really where I wanted to get to. I don't know why those levels aren't showing up. I have a feeling it's to do with the orientation of the view itself. It needs to be perpendicular to the way that those levels are working, which likely got messed up when I did that Project North adjustment. So what we'll do now is, super quick, last thing is File, Export, PDF, and I'm going to do the same thing with my base here and just dash vector, and that all looks good. I don't know why I keep getting these pop-ups either. Close this, and now, okay, it's closed, hit export, going to replace it, jump back into Illustrator, and I'm going to update that file to give us a little bit more of our information when it comes to the shadows. So again, because I haven't changed anything, now I got the massing in the model, right? So all that to say is that we can really expedite some of these workflows rather than have to wait and mess around with some of this other stuff. We can just outline the building and update things as they kind of progress. It's going to go ahead and modify some of this stuff. It's can be really rewarding to do things nice and quickly. I had some students say, why would I do anything in SketchUp if I could just do it all inside of Revit? That is totally fair if that's the way that you want to do things, also totally fair. This is really where I would start the process. I'm going to try and figure out why my levels, you can see my levels are on. So I'm going to go ahead and just finally make sure that we turn off those levels, which is, it is what it is, and do one final export here. That's all good. File export dash vector overwrite. Yes, cool. Relink and something like this. Ta-da! So depending on what you want to do, you can of course, get in here and start to, modify some of these elements to get some more information out of them. This is a pretty context heavy map, just turning on the shadows here. We've got, just our building. I don't know what you guys are going to focus on. It looks like there's definitely a bunch of information when it comes to the massing. So feel free to kind of, start with some of these images. These look pretty good. And then eventually you guys should be able to get to something like this. Obviously, none of these images, these symbols are out of Revit, so I don't recognize them anyways. They might be super custom, but I would highly suggest that they are coming out of Adobe Illustrator. Anyways, guys, sorry that went a little sideways there on me with the levels. I'll try and get that organized and see why it's doing that. In a different life, I would just start from scratch, but I know we've only got an hour, so I know it's been almost 2. So thanks for taking the time, coming to hang out. Take a look at this tutorial. If it's what you guys want, then that's great. If it's not, then let me know, and we'll try and change gears for next week. So shoot me an email or shoot me a note over Blackboard, and happy to try my best to help. We can either continue thinking about working on some of these things, how do I get some of this text to look this way, aligning it with certain modules in the building. Maybe you guys want to start to see how to get an image like this put together, just trying to come up with some solutions for what that looks like. So I am at your disposal, or supposed to be, and we'll just keep on rolling in that way. So thanks so much for coming to hang out. If you were in class on Friday, I apologize. I was kind of in the middle of something else, and hopefully you got some use out of the SketchUp tutorial. And if not, then this tutorial should help you in the best way that it can. So cheers, guys. Talk to you soon. Thanks. Bye.